Real quick before we get started, this is the third and final part of our talk with ShiZZa OaK.
Welcome to AOL. Welcome to AOL Underground.
Yeah, so I watched that documentary, Music Got Free, you mentioned it, and it is so true. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a very good documentary. Some of the groups that were mentioned in this podcast are on that. Some of the members, some of the folks you mentioned are in it. And I know what really struck me is paying $20 a CD was ridiculous, right? And it's for some reason the music industry thought they could hold on to it. They thought they could sue people just to stop it. And it's like, there's no way, man. I can get it for free and I can get it 4 weeks early. Like, there's no way I'm buying that CD, you know? Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't, they didn't make it easy. Like, Apple makes it, Spotify makes it stupid easy, right? There's no point anymore, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is they make it easy until it's not, right? We're kind of already seeing that with stuff like it's a shift from music, but like Netflix. Hey, you remember when Netflix was $7.99 a month and they had good content? I do. Does that make us old now? I guess it does. We remember the early days of streaming. How about that? But I mean, now if you want full Netflix, 4K and all that, sure, the tech evolves a bit, but I got, there's Netflix accounts that are $20 a month now, and then they don't have near as much content as they did before because everybody else said me too. And now you got to juggle 10 subscriptions, and now we are back to paying more than you ever did for cable, which was the problem in the first place. So yeah, it's a cycle, and I feel like we're at like another bubble of the cycle where piracy does absolutely still exist. It's for the most part underground and riskier now, but I still think people are going to keep taking those chances. And the problem is if it keeps getting easier and easier, that's when they're going to try to squash it again. And of course, laws and things evolve too. Like DMCA changed everything, as far as how easy it was or how you could rest easy, pirating things. But I think there's always going to be that struggle between people above a certain IQ or even below a certain IQ and the people trying to stomp out piracy.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mentioned the Netflix stuff. Like, if I want to see a certain movie, and it's not on any of my streaming services, and it's like, well, there's no way I'm paying like $10 to see this. Like, I'm just gonna go and use Usenet,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one place you can pretty much always find it.
Yeah, I mean, there's massive private torrent sites out there that don't make headlines because why would they? People don't. If you get something big, like a lot of people know like what.cd. That was an infamous one that did fail or get taken down, or I don't really know the lore of it, but that was a music torrent site that was essentially the Library of Congress for music. It had absolutely everything that had ever been released, and then one day someone just pulled the plug. And obviously other ones have popped up since, but that's part of that cycle you said. Is like, it's almost like the banks, like except torrent sites can get too big to fail, or can't get too big to fail, I guess.
There was like uTorrent and some other ones. They made it like stupid simple, and then like it would automate. Then you'd Plex. You could set up to auto download your favorite shows, kind of like RSS feeds or whatever.
Yep.
And then it would like feed into. Yeah, it was amazing.
Like Sonar and Radar. There's all kinds of stuff out there that can automate this stuff if you know what you're doing and where to find stuff.
I think for about 6 months, I like convinced my wife we didn't need cable, and I had all our favorite shows on auto download. And then like something happened and I'm like, no, I'll fix it. She's like, no, we're just going to pay for this. Like, I'm sick of you telling me you can fix it. I'm like, no, just give me 10 more minutes. We'll have it downloaded,
That's that delicate balance, right?
Yeah.
I remember when it was amazing to get a pirated copy, I should say, of a TV show that aired the same day. And now it's like, you can almost expect to be able to get it sometimes before it airs if they release it digitally somewhere,
Yeah, I remember the pre-airs. Someone told me like the companies would like, I don't know if it's true or not, but like if you had a big satellite dish, you could like catch the transfer or something when it goes in between the stations if you knew where to point it. I mean, I don't know. You would think maybe they just mail it, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's super exciting, man. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
I had mentioned I want to share a couple quick things. I know this is getting a bit long. And I don't want to divert too much from AOL and the scene, but I did want to touch on something that happened during this time that I don't know if I've heard much of it on your show or really anywhere. But the .com boom and bust was approximately the years we were just talking about, 99 to 2002 ish. And even then, other than us college kids, there was really a percentage, very few people online, and almost every person was still deathly afraid of like shopping online or putting their credit card information online. The boomers and all those people were deathly afraid of doing that back then. I kind of wish they still were, but and even like HTTPS didn't even exist yet. It really was like the wild west of the internet to exploit things. And not just, I'm not talking piracy, I'm talking just websites and in general. But companies really had no clue how to secure sites or how e-commerce really worked. They all said, yeah, me too. And they got all this funding, and then they tried to figure it out afterwards. And some of them didn't make it. Some of them made it through. But there was crazy things back then. Like if a website had a price mistake, I mean, back then it would last for days, not minutes. And you'd get your order almost every time because nobody was really checking, I remember one specific I got, there's a sports company called East Bay. They've been around forever. I used to get like soccer gear there when I was a kid. They sell jerseys and just sports stuff. I remember in like 99, 2000, they had baseball jerseys, like the really nice, expensive ones. They were supposed to have a sale on all of them for $99.99. Well, somebody screwed up a decimal point, and I got a whole bunch of baseball jerseys for $9.99. Still have some of them in my closet to this day. I thought ahead and I got some bigger sizes. But stuff like that, like it would last for days, and we could stack coupons. There's a million examples of like how you could exploit things back then that is not, it'll never exist again with how security has ballooned and appropriately so. But of course we took advantage back then. I remember websites where we could stack multiple coupons on top of each other and get 60, 70, 80% off every order we placed because they just didn't know they didn't even think about this until we did it. And even if they did catch it, I feel like half the bugs we exploited, they were never really caught. They were just accidentally fixed through like website refreshes or updates or whatever. But like specifically, I actually at one point I got banned from Amazon. They had a sale on PlayStation 2 games. So that's around this time. It had to be like 2002-ish. They had a buy two, get one free sale. So you put 3 games in your cart, one of them ends up being free. Still common these days sometimes, but back then, again, they didn't really know how to run things, even Amazon. So if you ordered those 3 games, it showed up in your order history. You could wait for, you would order 2 games that weren't in stock and then one that was. And as long in your cart and your order history, if that one showed up as the free one, you'd let it ship, it was free, and then you'd cancel the other 2. They never charged you a dime. So we got essentially unlimited free PS2 games until about 10 or 20 in. Amazon caught on, obviously, eventually, and then told me I was banned forever from Amazon. I signed up years later when Gmail came out, and I've been an Amazon member ever since. So they've in more ways than one gotten their money back from me, so I don't feel too bad about that.
That's great. So they literally said you're banned for life?
I had an email at one point, and I think I was using Yahoo, and I wanted to print it out at the time because that's one that was like, haha, funny. Yeah, I got an email that said, you are banned from ordering things from our site. We are blocking your email. Please do not try to create another account. And back then, Amazon wasn't really the end all. It was still the .com boom. There was stores popping up all over the place, buy.com, 800.com, Egghead. Half these nobody's going to remember, but there were lots of them popping up because all this VC funding. So I didn't really care. Oh, boo-hoo, I can't order from Amazon anymore. But 5-6 years later, Gmail came out, and I was like, I guess I can sign up for it. I lived in a different state. I had a new email. They're not going to keep me banned because of my first and last name. So I signed up for Amazon and have that account ever since. So if Amazon's listening, I'm just kidding.
I forgot about buy.com.
Yeah, they actually, buy.com got bought out by Rakuten, who's a kind of a prevalent name now. They're kind of they bought out, I think, Ebates too, that like rebate site, and now Rakuten's kind of a rebate site. But buy.com, fell to the wayside and got bought out, and then no longer exists. But yeah, buy.com coupons were the jam back in the day. They always had like a 30 off 100 or something like that. I bought a lot of PC parts from them back in the day. We also, I don't know if I could dig too deep into this, and I'll make it brief, I guess. But some more examples. There were multiple websites where we could exploit gift cards. Actually, do you remember how I explained the overhead OH accounts? We had to coordinate within a very set, short period of time. Well, these systems were not fast back then. They were not robust. Half the websites didn't even offer gift cards or digital gift cards. But the ones that did, the systems were garbage. They were slow. They were not up to par. They should not have been doing this. So we could actually coordinate gift cards and get multiple orders off of one gift card if we coordinated it right. So we'd say you had a $100 gift card to, I don't know, let's say buy.com. We'll pick on them. And you coordinated 3 friends or just 3 of your own laptops, loaded up the cart with $300 orders and hit go, go, go. They would all go through like it was nothing. And you only bought 1 gift card.
What? That's crazy.
And this happened at a lot of places. It wasn't just, I don't think it ever actually happened at buy.com. But that would work. We go offline. I could tell you about a few more. Over time we had to get more creative. The companies were getting more savvy because they kind of had to be. Securities, increased. They started hiring people just for security. HTTPS quickly became a standard, so we couldn't mess with tokens and things like that very easily. A lot of the tricks just didn't work anymore. So then, I never got into spamming or carding, anything like that, which was what a lot of other people were doing at that time. But, I never wanted to mess with like individuals or annoy individuals. Maybe it's kind of the Robin Hood approach, I guess. In my head, I had that. Like, I don't want to mess with the dude. I don't want to mess up his day, his life. I'm not going to screw with somebody's credit card, anything like that. But these giant companies, they get so much funding right now, billions of dollars, that they're not even going to notice me. So why not pick on them? And I like to think I directly helped improve their security over time.
There's a correlation here. So remember earlier you were saying like, oh yeah, well all I did was phishing, and like so I was good, It's the same thing with this. Like I didn't do the cracking. I was good. It's fine.
Yeah, there is again, you tiptoe the fine line. But yeah, again, I never felt guilty about what I did, and I know I would have felt guilty if I had impacted any individuals. I don't know. Take that for what it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just copium. I don't know. But
no, you helped them. You helped those companies.
Yeah, they're way more secure now, and they're welcome for it. One funny exception was that when they came a little bit later, and I like this one, was Apple. Not a small company or an individual. They had a new version of OS 10 or OS X or whatever the heck they called it come out. This was like 2004-ish, maybe. And they offered you could get an upgrade CD/DVD in the mail for like $10 if you had a machine that worked on this new OS. Instead of there's no really way to download 5 gigs or whatever, they would send you a disc, or you could go to retail and buy the whole thing. I think back when they actually sold their OS for like $100. So the thing is, these upgrade CDs, even though people could get them for $10, would eBay for $70 for whatever reason. Someone couldn't get one or just needed an extra. I don't know, but they sold, and you could get them for $10. But to get one, you had to have a serial number from an eligible device and punch it into their website. Said, okay, you qualify for this, $10. Well, we quickly learned we could scrape listings on eBay and Yahoo and things like that, where people taking nice close-up pictures of their serial numbers. And then we would punch that in, and oh yeah, look at that. Okay, I can get one for $10. And if we found one valid one, we could kind of it goes along kind of with the credit card prefix things in the early days. You could kind of guesstimate and just keep punching in numbers towards the end of these codes on Apple's site, and you'd get 20% of them will be valid. So if you sat down for a half hour, you could get 50 of these CDs, $10 a piece. I would get individual manila envelopes in the mail in stacks, sometimes just in a box from the mailman. And then we'd immediately, tear the label off, put them on eBay, put a new label on, out the door, $70 each. So that was good. That kept me afloat for a bit after college. But here's the silver lining to that too. I feel like you're saying, hey, you don't mess with individuals. You're messing with these people on eBay. Those are individuals. We found out later, and my buddy, called me and was laughing about this. He's like, one of my friends tried to get an upgrade disc and they can't because somebody stole their cereal. He's like, what can he do? Do you have an extra? I'm like, well, I have an extra, but when you punch in a serial and it says it's invalid or already been used, it would also give an 800 number to call Apple. It says, if you think this is incorrect or a problem, give us a call. We'll help you out. I'm like, you know what? I'm curious. I do have one for him if he needs it, but have him call that number and let me know what happens. And he essentially, he called them, explained to them, oh, yes, that should be valid. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. They sent him one for free. They didn't even charge him $10. So I like to think, again, in my
Wow.
head, anybody I might have potentially screwed over on eBay actually got a $10 discount if they just called the number on the screen.
You are like the Robin Hood.
I know, right? Yeah, whether I meant to be or not. But yeah, I stopped most of this stuff around that era, 2003, 2004. Like I said, the sites were all getting smarter. Deals weren't as lucrative. There was no big margins. It was on eBay. Shipping prices were going up. All that stuff was factors of me not caring as much. I was finishing up college too. And my final frontier of internet shenanigans was probably the early days of online poker and casinos. They were completely unregulated back then. I don't know if you ever dabbled, but it was fun. There's a lot of online poker, especially, but there were also full casinos, but they were all offshore. We actually had IRC channels and a few chat rooms and some forums back when those were a thing before Reddit, chatting about these online casinos, and we could tell which ones were legit, which ones didn't pay out, which ones did. And back then, you either had to link a direct link a bank account or use PayPal because they wouldn't even do American credit cards, and there was no crypto. It didn't exist back then. Yeah, that all went away because Congress made it illegal to pay away for domestic sports betting and stuff. But before it was all done, we would exploit, and not really I say exploit, we would just take advantage of bonuses they would give us. And I always quote unquote gambled using my head. I would do math. It's like, you're going to give me a huge bonus on my deposit. I would do the math and crunch the numbers. And it's like, well, this is a guaranteed profit. And those are the ones I would do. And then once in a blue moon, you'd hit something like a royal flush. And, the thing that should have been a mathematical $100 profit turned into $10,000. And they paid out almost all the time. So I left college with less. I did this like last year or two of my college. I never had a job in college because of, the earlier stuff I mentioned, and then online casinos. I left college with less than 10 grand in debt and a degree. And, the younger kids are going to hate me for saying that, but it was possible back then. And I never once had to have a real job while I was in school. I can't say I really regret anything because I kind of did stick to my guns, but I never did mess with individuals or small companies for that matter. Just went after the big dogs and these. I mean, it's hard to. I'm never going to feel sorry for any casino. So, but after school, I eventually ended up in the Chicago area and scored some IT work. Doing work at like a stock trading company in the financial district. And I only mention that because, and this is my final story, and this really does tie it back around to AOL. My company was, was a bunch of stock traders. I was the IT guy. I kept their computers going, the connections fast, things like that on site. And we were a growing company, so we opened up a new office. And, the big wigs went around, shopped around Chicago in that area and found an office space. And it was this gorgeous space, like picture .com boom, big open ceilings, purple walls, full kitchen, all that stuff. I had a freaking full air hockey table that they just left behind. It was really a remnant of the .com era. I was like, whoa, this place looks awesome. This is our new office. This is great. I had my own office. This was awesome. Well, I came to discover when we were moving in, the previous tenant, guess who it was?
AOL?
AOL's Music Now division. Do you remember AOL Music Now?
I worked at AOL Music Now.
You what? No way. Yeah. Don't tell me. You don't have to tell me, but was it in Chicago?
Yeah, it's probably it's got to be the exact same building. So
I want to say, was it on Washington Street? Like
yeah,
by the river?
It was right across from Ogilvy.
Yeah, yeah. So I work in the same office as you, man. This is wild.
Hilarious.
It's more.
Yeah, no, it was a nice office.
It was, yeah. If it's the same place, it was. I wish I had taken pictures because it was the coolest place I'm ever gonna work. So okay, well, AOL Music Now was the previous tenant there. They were, for people that don't know, that was a web-based music service before the Spotify's of the world, kind of like a Rhapsody, if people remember that. It was very similar to that. So in this office space, there was a locked closet when we moved in, and we found a way to open up the door, and we opened up the door. And there were stacks and stacks of promo-only CDs just sitting there, which I guess you guys must have just had to manually rip a bunch of stuff that you got.
Yeah, we had tons of CD ripping stations. It would just be like a computer with like 10 different drives or whatever. Yeah,
I mean, it had to be because I opened up this door and it was like, I don't know what to compare it to. That scene in Indiana Jones where he opens the Ark and it's just like the glowing, like something like that. I opened it up and here I am, an ex-member of RNS. I mean, you could say founding member-ish of RNS, involved in all this stuff. And I open up this door and it's couple thousand promo CDs staring at me and a bunch of other random stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. So I still have some of those.
Oh, it's awesome.
Says for promo, this came from your office, I'm guessing. Promo only, property of Sony, nice Bruce Springsteen CD. This is the only one I really grabbed and kept. A lot of them were really garbage. I think that closet was just the stuff people didn't want to take on their way out, to be honest. It was a lot of weird stuff I'd never heard of. But I also found this, and I don't know if you recognize this from your office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I worked with the Winamp team, so AOL bought Winamp. And so part of my job was to download music all day and then test Winamp. It was awesome.
So this is a wooden sign of the Winamp logo that apparently came from your office that was in that closet. And I swiped this immediately because, I'd worked with these guys before AOL bought out Winamp. So I had direct ties to it. I'm like, oh my God, that is 100% mine. I don't care if I get fired for taking this. This is going in my backpack tomorrow.
That's so cool.
I've had it ever since. I've had this for about 20 years since I swiped it from there.
That's so cool. Yeah, Winamp was amazing. The AOL Music Now. So there was this weird time where the music companies tried to get in, figure out how to make money off online music. So it was something called digital rights management, DRM, and this is before iPods. So yeah, you had the Rio MP3 players, and you would download as much music as you wanted for $15 a month. But if you didn't hook up your MP3 player back to your computer, all the music would stop working after a month. And so anyway, it was a colossal failure because MP3 still existed, and then once the iPod came out. So
yeah, it was good. They gave, I think, Rhapsody a run for their money, which is all they could have really aimed for back then, without innovating. Who would have thought iPod was the next thing? But you had mentioned that. So that's really, that was my last kind of tie of any way to AOL. I can't believe you worked there. That's wild to me. So fast forward a bit, I kind of left all this stuff behind me like a lot of us have. Life gets in the way. I moved around a bunch. And then in 2015, a book came out, and you had mentioned it previously, called How Music Got Free by this guy named Stephen Witt. And anyone listening to this podcast, I absolutely recommend reading this book or find the audiobook. Because he was a real researcher, journalist kind of guy, not just a random guy writing a book. He's skilled. He rounded up and did a ton of research on RNS. It was a major focus of his, how our operation worked. A lot of the lawsuits involved in that. He rounded up, record executives and artists and kind of interwove the perspectives of what really happened how did MP3s come to be, and what was really the whole story of that era. And then, that came out at this point almost 10 years ago, that book. And I was like, wow, what a resurgence. That's great. That's awesome. I thought that's what ever was going to be. And between you and me and anyone listening to this, about in June, I was on one of my sites where I find movies and whatnot, private torrent site. And I'm going through the daily top 10. You log in, you do your routine, what's new today. And what got leaked last night, and I see something called How Music Got Free. And I was like, what in the world is this? So apparently Eminem, of all people, funded this documentary for Paramount Plus based on this book. But they did it, kudos to Eminem and these producers, because they did it, and you can throw your opinion in. I think they did it perfectly. They followed the kind of structure of the book, which also did it perfectly. But they injected their opinions. But man, Eminem produced this thing, and he came out of this documentary looking like a total weenie. At least maybe that's my opinion. But he did not come out in a good light. And they had clips of him definitely reacting to some of the things we did in RNS that directly affected his life. I don't want to spoil the whole doc. It's not my story to tell for that part of it. But I highly recommend people, if you don't want to take the time to read a book or listen to an audiobook, watch that on Paramount Plus or wherever you might see it. There's a trailer for it that's pretty good on YouTube. But it's a 2-part doc. And I think I don't know why they made it 2 parts. It's 2 45-minute episodes. Why not just make that a normal documentary? I think they just wanted to call it a series. Who knows? But it's really great. And it involves Eminem. The narrator is Method Man, and it is wild. To be a part of something that little and then have it blow up like this so many years later, and be able to, and kudos to you for this podcast, man, to be able to freely talk about this stuff. And I'm sure you've heard this from other guests. It's like, this has been rolling around in my head or buried in deep memories for so many years. And who do I talk to about this stuff? I mean, I don't have we never knew each other's real names. I held up this sign before I knew you worked in this damn office. That's just wild. That's how crazy this can be and how these connections can reform. I mean, I expect till the end of time now to run into people, I guess, because we know it's possible. And I'm sure people have reconnected through you and this podcast to each other again. I know people have, shout outs or, hey, if you're out there kind of guys. I don't really have anybody like that because I have this documentary, like you said, that Al Capone that I mentioned earlier, that was my buddy. He's a major part of this documentary and they put his real name on the screen. This is a guy I knew 25, 30 years ago, talked to for countless hours, shared music with, was part of this crazy popular group. And I never knew his real name. I never in a million years thought I'd know who he was or see him or chat with him online, but I'm doing that all again. We've all reconnected through this documentary. I looked him up on LinkedIn by his name. We chatted for like an hour, and then we're back on IRC. We have a new room where a lot of us OGs hang out. I haven't had MIRC installed in 20 years, but hey, kudos to that. I'll butcher his name, but the guy that makes MIRC, it was the first software I ever bought legitimately and the first online digital, I got my own account and my key for MIRC that I bought 20 something years ago still works to this day.
Wow, that's incredible.
So yeah, like he and NetFrac and name drop whoever, but a lot of the OGs from the very early 1996 days of MP3s are finally reconnected, and it's wild, and it's cheesy, but I wrote down the quote at the end of that documentary that Method Man says it. The very last thing he says in the documentary, he says, most call them pirates, but they should be called pioneers. And you talk about goosebumps, first time I heard that out of someone like Method Man's mouth on a Paramount Plus documentary talking about me and my buddies, like, that validates everything to me. I don't care what the actual laws were or are,
That's so true, man. That's such a great story.
And you know what? I got to add one more thing. I'm half pissed off about it because they didn't track me down. And I find out later that the guys that were involved with the documentary got to go to a premiere party in New York City, and Method Man was there, and they got to get drunk and hang out with Method Man all night.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
So I was this close to hanging out with Method Man. Maybe next time.
Yeah, I thought the coolest part of the documentary was how they explained, I'm not going to give it away, but basically how pre-releases happen. Like, how could you get a CD a month early? And I thought that was super cool to learn how that happened.
And I learned the same way you did, man. Those were going to my hard drive in my dorm room first from, again, I won't give everything away, but from that guy. I had a login for that guy. I had a login for that guy on my FTP server.
That's crazy.
That's the stuff I was getting. That's how close to home this thing got to me,
Dude, you had to be like the coolest guy on campus, man.
I like to think so. But yeah, I mean, if it existed, they could come to me and get it. And we would just transfer it through AIM or whatever we could back to ICQ, probably file transfers. But yeah, it was nuts. And to learn about things that close to you so many years later, and it just that I'm not joking. I rewatched that documentary the first week it was out, probably 8, 9, 10 times. And I got more from it every time. And they would literally have old chats of IRC scroll. I don't know if you noticed these. I noticed the details because I'm like glued into it. But there's parts where they're talking. They're actually scrolling legitimate text from IRC, from MIRC back in the day. And I'm pausing it every other second because I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. I remember that guy. And it's just chats flying by. But whoever did that doc, they had the real stuff. They had the real information. They had logs from 1996. Now, whether that came out from like court cases or what, I have no idea. Or maybe Al Capone had stuff.
That's amazing. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. And like obviously the details are something only I'm going to pick up or the people involved. But I think even a layperson could watch this documentary and they're certainly going to learn a lot. And I think they'll be interested in how things really happened back then.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just crazy that like the groups existed. It is just like who could get it the fastest. And it was more just like, for fun. It wasn't to make money,
No, it never was. Yeah. No. And I think the doc touches on some of that because the guys that did go that route, we know their names for a reason because they were dumb. They got caught as they should. I traded everything and anything, but I never once even crossed my mind to start charging for it or burn a CD and sell it. Or I do have some sympathy for some of that stuff, but it never really. That was again. That was way past the line that I had drawn for myself.
So what are you doing these days?
I'm just a normal dude. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm an IT administrator at a shipping warehouse. Much more low stress than the old AOL Music Now office days of being in the stock market. Just a chill life with a great family, and that's about it.
Is there anything else you want to share today?
I do want to give one shout out. If anybody has ties to me, look me up. Whatever, I'm around. There's a kind of a central repository that I honestly don't know who runs it. I've had a lot of contact with some of these long lost people over the last couple months, ever since this documentary came out. There's been like I said, we were back on IRC. We're talking to each other again, and people just every other day someone shows up. It's like, oh, it's you guys, and then we have to kind of remember who they are, and we'll chat with each other and whatever. But one guy has been compiling a giant repository of old info files, artwork, everything involving the original MP3 scene. And it's really awesome. If you were ever just a downloader or if you were a part of the scene or whatever, go to mp3scene.info. You can just browse through old releases. He's got it, or any article about this kind of stuff he'll put up. You can read about like when APC got busted or when RNS guys went to court. You can look up an info file from 1996 and just, see if your name showed up in the shout outs, things like that. I've definitely dug through some files, see the old ASCII artwork that people would make for our info files, running into more and more of these people that says, hey, I have this stuff. And a lot of the stuff is ending up at this site. There's obviously no piracy. There's no MP3s. You're not going to find downloads on this site, any kind of music or anything like that. But you are going to find a lot of information. And I kudos. The guy's name's escaping me right now, but kudos to the guy who's running mp3scene.info, because it's a fun place if you were ever part of this stuff.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that sounds great. I think I used to go to InfoForce for a while to find stuff, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and this is very specific to the MP3 scene too. So,
right on. Cool, man. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hack the planet. Hack the planet.
Welcome to cyberspace.